too is that, you know, some say it's even good for you, you know, a couple here and there, but it's like, are you trying to say that social media is good for us? Because it's really, I mean, besides talking to your family members, which you could do on your own phone.
Well, it's good if you have a business.
Yeah, that's true. I think that business.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's, you know, any good thing can be misused. But when you've got, who's behind it? Who's behind it? Corporate greed. So you really got to be on the alert for that. Okay, so we're going to look at this, the mental health crisis, insecure. This is Gen Z. So everything is not awesome. This entire issue is bathed in this individualism. What is it? It's behind most fundamental cultural changes in recent decades, and in the West anyway. Is this also the rise of division and isolation? I say so. Individualism. There's a paradox. So you got iGens that are struggling to fit in and belong, but they're also fighting for their identity outside the perfection in their online persona. So, but they don't have the discernment. The younger the kid, the less the discernment in, I've got to be that, I've got to do that. And then there's something else inside of saying, I can't, this isn't real. There's an internal struggle. There's a lot of the anxiety right there. They're between these two worlds of, this is what I've got to be, but this is impossible. Where does that leave me? iGens do not feel good about themselves. Now I've got I think I may have mentioned this in here. This is again, one of those things where it's, if you've heard me say this, just act like it's the first time you've heard it. One of my favorite pastors is Chip Ingram, and he preached a sermon called "Comparison Always Leads to Carnality." And so when you think about that, if I'm comparing myself to somebody else, what is that about? I'm either looking down at them or I'm putting myself down and looking up to them. It is a no-win situation either way.
What do they call it, the comparison trap?
To me.
At least that's what they do in my business. They
Is it?
Don't compare to each other because so-and-so sells more than this or that. Because
Okay.
all you're doing is trapping yourself in those feelings. So we call it the comparison trap.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Sounds like they're fairly healthy there at your job. That's good. So what you see is kids are seeing these posts, they feel less than, or they lash out and try to put others down to build their self-esteem. Same as back in the day when we were in person. What we want to remember here, and this is why we are digging so deep into this. This is, except for those of you who are among those, and you may not have thought about these issues for yourself. What we're looking at this is to understand who we're trying to reach and what their needs are. And so that's why we're going so deep, because these are the farthest from the reach of ministry. Their souls are crying out against the false self portrayed by others and what they feel like they have to post and who they truly are. So being in that space is just devastating, and it's just further undermining their self-worth and their identity. Who am I? You know, adolescence is a time to differentiate from parents, to begin to define yourself. What are my preferences? What do I believe? Who am I outside of my parents? There's nobody to separate them from the screen. Yeah. Okay. So this is grown up under the hands-off parenting. Who really appears to love them? The likes. This is the positive feedback I get. Okay. Individualism in an environment of optimism can be beneficial. That's kind of what was said to be a part of millennials is that, hey, we can change the world. It's, we're going to make a difference. We're doing things differently. We're changing the landscape, etc. So, you know, looking at these charts on 95 and 96, you see the downturn in happiness, life satisfaction. And guess where the turn is happening? You notice those charts? 2012, 2013. I think we just, you know, go back and just burn all the smartphones, right? What was it? Carly, those of y'all that remember her from our last class. I said something, hey, we miss you. And she said, what are y'all talking about? I said, we're talking about smartphones are from the pits of hell. So, but I mean, the thing about this is if it was one random study, or maybe two tiny little studies, this is study after study after study, cross culture, cross socioeconomic. So while the internet and social media preceded the smartphone, it's the 24/7 access that's making the difference. You know, 97, we see a huge jump in loneliness. And again, around the same time as what? A smartphone.
Nikki, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you think that part of the addiction with this has to do with people's personalities? So say if you're a type A person, okay, would that make you be a person that's addicted more than a type B? I mean, I think it's an individual basis here.
Yeah, and what we're saying here is this is a wide generalization, but we've got a lot of data here that shows it's not necessarily related to a particular personality, socioeconomic group, you know, more gender than anything else, but across everything else. But I will say this, there are certain personalities that are have a predisposition towards certain things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
but
are in that market, but they're also probably the leaders of it, you know.
Yeah.
but you know, we're talking about for a small percentage. This is overwhelming.
Yeah, it is.
It's overwhelming. So yeah, you'll see, you know, just like anything else, it's not an all or nothing. You know, there's a continuum along the scale. You have some people way out at this end, some people way out at this end, and most fall in the middle. But I'll tell you, if it's 9 hours a day, y'all,
That's a lot.
yes.
I have something interesting to say. So alcohol addiction runs in my family. Never been addicted to alcohol.
Mhm.
Me too.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like you have an addictive personality.
Yeah.
What is it gonna fall on? Yeah.
It can be, but also we're talking about the developing brain that can actually be molded to be addicted. So now the last I heard about the genetics on alcoholism, it's about 25% of the population has the gene, you know, so, but we can see it's a lot more than 25% of these kids. So yeah, good thoughts though. See what you guys are pulling out are, okay, yeah, but are there exceptions here? What is this? What is that? Great. This is what I want you guys doing, is thinking about this. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for people that I care about? What does this mean for ministry?
I've been noticing when we get triggered on it.
Mhm.
When we compare ourselves, we'll notice we're like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So FOMO is for what?
You're missing it.
Fear of missing out. It has a major role in the increase in loneliness. So Dr. T talks about a 13-year-old Grace. She saw her friends on Instagram at a birthday party she wasn't invited to. So there's that exclusion, feelings of rejection. And you know, we just see this over and over again with this stuff. Okay, look at this. This is a possible model for the origin of iGen loneliness. More screen time, less in-person social interaction results in more loneliness. I think it's pretty fair. And thinking about this video we watched at the beginning, that was just from last year, so it would have been like 2021. How much of a difference are you hearing between this 2015 and the information from this 2021?
Right.
Same. Same. So why isn't anything changing? Economic, greed. Yeah, greed and complacence, right?
Convenience too.
Yes.
I mean, especially with little kids. Like I was talking to my mom, she's
Mhm.
involved in leadership at our multinational church. And I brought up the fact that like every week I would see like a little kid in the stairwell with the iPad. It's like, well, her mom's doing this, and that's just what it is.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
don't have time to deal to just give their kid time.
yeah, yeah. How much of that happens at home? You gotta wonder.
A lot.
It's like the substitute for parenting.
Exactly. What was it we read? Oh, my kids aren't, one kid was on the cell phone, one kid was playing video games, one kid was, right? They were all staring at screens. Overall, pretty good parenting day, no fights. Good job. Not parenting. Yeah.
How would you explain that to a parent if they really don't have time to quite parent their kids? Because that was one of the
Mhm.
questions like my mom brought up about that.
Yeah.
Most of the parents at that church work 2 jobs and like
Mhm.
have like no time to spend with their kids whatsoever. So what would you kind of say?
No time?
Time to make time.
No time?
Well, if they're working.
They're
Yeah.
refugees, like they came here from like
Okay.
Rwanda.
Yeah.
Congo.
So did the kids bathe themselves?
Yeah.
Did the kids eat by themselves?
Probably if they're working
2
2
jobs.
jobs.
Well, I mean, I'm talking little kids. Yeah, I mean, you've got siblings that help, but there's ways. And one of those things that they mentioned was a digital Sabbath. Did you see that in that little red line down below, a digital Sabbath? Can we just take the phones out for an hour? Can we just sit down, even if we're just having a meal, whatever it is? I get the 2 jobs thing. I work 2 jobs, 3 jobs most of my life. But we also did, got by with less.
I think that's the issue.
I know refugees
Nobody
are-
wants to get by like with less and everything, especially right now on the inflation as far as price.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really hard to say, okay, we're gonna go without this and that, but some of the stuff they can't even afford that their needs, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes you don't realize that until you're in it, and not that we're, I have too much of an example, but in my family, I was working at a corporate job for many years, and my husband was working full time. We had different schedules, and it was crazy. And I got offered something less, but closer to home. We instantly, I tell people all the time, our relationship got better, our family got better.
Mhm.
We had a big change as soon as I made that leap. It was, $500 or $600 less a month. But it made up for it in leaps and bounds in other ways, and it still is. And it's one of those things like, was it tough to do? Yeah, we had to let some things go, but at the end of the day, it made everything else more.
And you bring up an exception too, I think, because we're talking about people with nothing,
Do that, yeah.
with nothing.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is the general population. Yeah, those kinds of situations are hard. And I'll tell you this, every now and then it's, you got a headache. Would I rather yell at my kid or give him that? Well, if we keep it to a set amount of time, right? What did parents do before? Right?
Well, kids play outside for one.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
But it was always the time, grandparents,
Mhm.
parents, you know, they spent quality time, you know, especially when it came to teaching them about who God was. It was quality time,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. And I, you know, like I probably, you know, these two classes meld together, the parent-child one and this one. But there were, it was a lady that was a chef, and she talked about how she got started was mom set her up on the counter. That's how small she was, or grandma set her up on the counter. Okay, you mix that egg, right? Okay, so she's getting her work done, maybe taking a little longer.
Yeah.
But that's something special that's happening.
And it doesn't happen as much anymore. 'Cause, having a new baby, I'm thankful. 'Cause my mom has stepped up a whole lot, but I hear it all the time from new moms that the
Mhm.
grandparents are at work still. So
Yeah.
it's hard for, like,
Yeah.
my mom just went back to work, and it's still hard for her to try to get my daughter and,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
do stuff with her. Like, everything's just different now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whereas when I was young, I was with my grandmother, I was in the kitchen, I was doing it,
Yeah.
you know, I got that.
Yeah.
I was able to do it.
Still having to work.
Good times, good memories. And you can do those. So what we've come to do is to learn to depend on ourselves too, right? As parents. Okay, so, and I love this book. Okay, I know I'm geeking out. Y'all are probably like, okay, it's great, but do we really need that many charts? But throughout this thing, she talks about her methodology.
Yeah.
She talks about, okay, well, does this mean that just lonely teens are using their smartphones? Good question. It's a good challenge to the research, but the abrupt change is across different research studies, different organizations, different populations. So a larger number are experiencing that, but so the evidence is it's wider in scope. Now, 2021, 2015, girls tend to be affected more than boys still. Dr. T attributes this to the tendency for girls to be prone to verbal aggression and resorting to cyberbullying versus boys who tend to be physically aggressive. Is that it? Okay.
Do you think that's also true because of the society we live in,
Mhm.
how the male is considered more superior?
Oh, yeah. I do, but I also think that part of it is that boys are being affected more than they're, you know, because a lot of this stuff is
That they're talking
self-reporting.
about, that's true.
It's self-reporting.
Uh-huh.
You know, now she did.
Whether they just want to say out loud.
Right.
they did it.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
That's a whole counseling thing.
Mhm.
There's two
Yeah.
tools more into like in person too, because I
Mhm.
feel like
Yeah.
boys when they, I can just picture, you know, them having something online and then they take it to when they're in person in school and have issues and then have that aggression. I mean, you're seeing younger and younger ages having issues in schools with
Yeah.
actual physical violence, which you didn't see that in like elementary school before, and now you are really seeing it.
Well,
And I just wonder.
this is a factor. I think it's a huge systemic issue. Disintegration of the family, attachment. This is coming in. Yeah.
You showed us about the mask.
The mask you live in. Yeah.
That to me would really think that it's equivalent.
Oh, yeah.
Because.
Yeah.
Boys are taught to be tough, be hard, where girls naturally are expressive.
Mhm.
So when it comes to these types of things, I think it's because we are more apt to express it.
Mhm.
Where boys are taught, you know, to talk tough and hard and suck it up and all of that. And then the aggression comes out and then it becomes violent or whatever. But I would say it's equivalent. I wouldn't say one is.
It
more
is.
than the other.
It is. It's just where do you see it?
Mhm.
Where do you see it show up? Yeah.
Yeah, along with what she was saying, like, as far as most guys that I know on social media never share anything personal or
Mhm. Yeah.
emotional. as opposed to girls, a lot of times will like put stuff on their stories.
Yeah.
For making it a little easier. Also, if a guy was cyberbullied and told a bunch of his friends, they probably just like, dude, it's just words, calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'd probably also go, ooh, you know, the male and female brains are different. So we're talking about verbal communication. Males are, you know, gosh, I'd have to get the figures. I think it's a couple of thousand less words from guys. And I don't think that's strictly cultural. I think that's cross-cultural because of the way that the female brain tends to use both sides of the hemisphere pretty equally, or I say equally. Frequently, male brain tends to keep to one side and the other, and that's just the difference in how they work. So they may have other means by which they video games. How many girls play video games? I know a lot of girls do, but I just thought, oh, I'd rather be shot, y'all. I would.
Cyberbullying in an online video game.
Oh, yeah.
Is like substantially worse, like the amount of like explicits used like in a gaming lobby, even like slurs, like it
Oh, yeah.
blow you away. Like,
because people just don't have their, you know, their filters. They just lose their mind. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I don't think so.
Oh, my heavens.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge addiction problem with boys is the video games. Okay, moving on here, we've got Afraid You're Gonna Live. So Dr. T talks about Laura, who describes her as her online persona is described as a depressed person's life. Prisoners of viewing others best outside to her inside. Have you ever heard that expression? You're comparing your insides to their outsides. Wow. Yes.
Somebody said you're comparing your lowlights to their highlights. And
that's good. Yeah. Yeah. Because only I know what my lowlights are. Yeah. So true. So true. So what you got is you don't see anybody else's failures. You don't see anybody else's down days. They've got this persona, and that makes the person viewing it say, what, you know, why aren't I having all these things? What's wrong with me? So they just get miserable through envy. Now, critical analysis of the research done by colleges reports on students seeking mental health services indicates that a better study would include the general population of students using anonymous survey. So this is another part where she's talking about how to do the research right. Because if you got a student coming into the clinic and you use that for your data, how do you know the difference between the general population versus a student that's seeking services? So, and getting the data anonymously. So what emerges from the research, she says, using the statement, I feel I can't do anything right, my life is not useful, or I do not enjoy life, is what Dr. T calls a tsunami of these beliefs in 8th and 10th and 12th graders. I guess that was just the standard going with those grades. So I think those charts are major depressive issue. Okay, anyway.
107, 108.
Major depressive.
Yeah. 109.
Yeah. So this is what one high school senior, Azar, calls out Instagram post saying his peers' lives are crap. What they're putting out there is crap. They're teenagers. They've got horrible lives, but yet Okay, so what's the system that keeps these unrealistic images in place and being stuck between longing to belong and knowing the falsehood they represent? Even outside the corporate greed that feeds us, because I'm going to tell you, they know this is going on. I haven't looked deeply, I probably should have, into that Facebook leak. They got the data, they know, and they just let it roll. All I see is my bottom line. I'm not seeing these kids that are just being destroyed by this stuff. So there's that place where you're torn. You see these things, you're longing, and a lot of times you know that they're false, but what can you do? You just got to play along. Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's the one we talked about. So the sentiments about I can't do anything right. My life isn't useful. I do not enjoy life. Again, she talks about this carries across race, socioeconomic status, small towns, big cities, suburbs, anywhere. So, and multiple studies. Now, again, the difference between the males and females. So in addition to the tendency toward verbal aggression, females also are held to impossible standards of body image. There are male-female double standards in behavior and expectations. And Dr. T talks about this. When a girl posts a sexy picture, she gets likes and she gets slut shaming. So no win. I've got to put it out there. And she talked about how these girls stage these things. I was watching, I started watching might have been Netflix series, and it was called Dark Web or something like that. I only watched 2 episodes and I'm like, oh no, I'm out of here. It was terrifying. But it was, they started out with this girl and she's, laying in her bed and she takes a picture like this. And she goes, no, take it like that. And then she takes it like this. And then she's, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. Is that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was a terrifying show. I don't even want to get started on the dark web. Oh my goodness. Females also use social media significantly more than males. We've already established that. Now, we asked the question, why might smartphones cause depression? So here's another one of those life examples, Greta. She described the anxiety about texting. On the one hand, being ignored after texting somebody brings her anxiety, but she also feels powerful when she doesn't respond to a boy that she's mad at. Mm-hmm. Now tell me here, that's cute and funny, but what is she becoming? It's what kind of person is she becoming? Yeah.
Yeah, and side note too, because some of these people don't know how to understand the text. They're not reading books as often and whatnot. So
yeah.
My friend Destiny, that the video is on, she's meeting with somebody tonight who didn't understand her text messages and got all upset and threw a little, I don't know, Gen Z fit.
It's just because it's hard to communicate over
They just don't
text.
understand.
Not even just the fact that people aren't reading, it's just that you're expressing your thoughts with words. And how other people interpret it might not be the
Absolutely.
same.
Yeah, they don't have
People.
They're not even reading.
Yeah, because you can't hear the emotion behind
Right.
the text.
Yeah.
But you're reading what you think they're trying to
Yeah.
express toward you.
I get this so much with couples, y'all. I do. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Let me read this text to you.
And I have such a fun story.
Yes.
You talk about couples, my mom and dad, they just had an anniversary on Friday. And they went to Kohl's together and they just kind of separated whatever they were just walking through, and my mom was in the home goods section and my dad texted me, was like, where are you? She said home goods. And he went outside to his truck, drove to Home Goods, on the other side of the street. She's like, where are you? I'm outside of Kohl's looking for you. He said, you said you were at Home Goods. She's like, we came in together.
How did you
He's
think
like,
I
I
got
walked.
there?
She said that he was mad for a while. while, but then they just started dying laughing.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's very
adorable.
simple.
That's hilarious.
That is cute. So, well, so yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no tone, there's no inflection. But the couples I get, they'll say, here, let me read this text. I'm going, nope, it's okay. I will try to talk them out of it. And they'll say, here's what he's,
You
no.
should have them both read the same text. Do it in the voice you meant and do it in the voice you meant. a good idea.
It's, it's one of those things where I don't, talk to each other. Let me see what happens
Yeah,
then,
that's true.
right? Talk to each other. Yeah, and I will use that anyway. Therapeutically, I do use that, but I try not to get them because that'll be a whole.
Yeah, because a lot of times they
Yeah.
talking about open up.
Yeah. Okay, so what we see here with this girl is both examples are ways to harm the soul. There's the idolatry of the next text. There's the sin of revenge. The soul shrinks. The heart becomes fearful and hardened. There's right. And where does trust come in? How does a person trust in that environment? How do we win trust with these folks? Okay, the epidemic of anguish, major depressive disorder. And remember, I gave you all the criteria for major depressive order. It was 5 of those 8 or 9, and a 2-week period. So we're talking about a pretty short period of time for them to meet the criteria for major depressive disorder. Then we also have the elements of self-harm and suicide as a result of those. So we're looking at a shocking rise in major depressive disorder from 2010 to 2015, 56%, and a 60% increase in emotional impairment. This study was 17,000 subjects. That is a legit study. Yes.
Is anguish major depressive like a new term?
No, that's just the title of the section. Section from the book. An epidemic of anguish is what she's talking about. So 2010 to 2015, I'd love to see 2015 to 2021. I'm guessing it's a whole lot. If we didn't have the pandemic, it would still be. I'm sure it's, but oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a whole different, and she talks in here about the tendency of entertainment going from, sparkly, fun teen movies about partying and that kind of thing. And then you're into Divergent and the dystopian future. And what was the other one? Yeah.
It's like everything's going to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now let's just think about this. So we see this shoot, right? Where would it, there's been nothing to stop that downward slope. We got your 2020, 2012, 2013 around here, and we see graph after graph, down, down, down. Something would have to happen that was that had a major impact to change the trajectory of that, right? Has there been anything like that? No. The pandemic, even more. And so think about that dystopian thinking. Now they've actually had the experience of what really was a dark time. I mean, how did it affect you guys? How did the lockdown, the pandemic, how did that affect you?
It was hard.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Well, I left the lockdown because I wasn't working a super serious job and I got to focus on being in school, so it was kind of nice and I got from home. I didn't really have a fear of COVID until like in January I actually had a stroke.
What?
That's why I wasn't here this past 5 years, but a massive stroke because of COVID, yeah.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
that reality check. But yeah, that is. hard.
Oh my goodness.
You know, I was talking to someone and they mentioned how millennials have went through like, what is it, 3 or 4 major?
Yeah, well, you have the COVID, you have 9/11, and then you have,
what was it? It was something else. It was something else.
Mhm.
So it's like we're breeding that next.
Gulf War,
generation.
was it the Gulf War?
or maybe they're considering 9/11, the act of terrorism, and then the fact that they were at war for so many years following it
That
as a
too.
separate, but I think I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about, like, there's
Yeah,
three
Yeah.
it's
separate-
3 separate big events that
that
we
day
lived
of
through.
9/11 is so different, like
Uh-huh.
being attacked on your soil versus having your family members go
Yeah.
away in war.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with COVID starting just because being in the workplace and still being essential and having to work through it. And then like hanging on for 4 o'clock every day when Andy would go on, and tell what was going on. And it was like, you were holding your breath, waiting for those numbers and just paying attention to it. And then until you finally did the thing, like shut down and stop listening to everything and stayed in your house. And
Mhm. But it was supposed to be 2 weeks.
Yep.
It's supposed to be 2 weeks, y'all.
It lasted still
I was a
going.
mess.
The
Yeah.
hardest thing for me was when my granddaughter and her mom was living with us.
Mhm.
Okay, so the hardest thing for me was, I was doing my work in the kitchen. I had went home, they
Yeah.
sat home, set everything up in the kitchen, which that was terrible,
Mhm.
because everybody comes in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
So, but anyway, the hardest part would be when my granddaughter, she started kindergarten, she would sit beside me and I'm working and she's doing school.
Kindergarten.
The teacher has to, and that was hard. And, but as far as being home by myself, husband's at work, and I turned one of the bedrooms into an office,
Uh-huh.
so it became a little bit more like work. So it was just like, to me, it was
Yeah.
the best thing, but I guess at this point, it's like, I'm not out enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not social enough.
If
And I
you're an
don't-
introvert, it was like, hey, I'm loving this. But after a while, you get sick of those Zoom meetings and,
Mhm.
all of that. So my point is downward trajectory, unchecked. Then you add the pandemic on top of that.
I think
Yes.
also the pandemic, we've seen a lot of racial things going on.
Oh, yes,
So let's
yes.
not forget about that.
Right.
That right there, the racial thing, sitting at home and watching
Yes.
that
Yeah.
as a minority.
And that's still going on too.
Yes,
Yes, it
that had me so shook up, especially with the Breonna Taylor stuff, because it's
Yeah.
happening in our city. You watch it on the news and this and that.
Yeah.
But to see it happen
Mhm.
live in person, I went downtown to
Yeah.
protest and everything. That shook my core.
Yeah.
That did something to my brain,
Mhm.
like.
Yeah, yeah. And you-
COVID, racial, it was a mess. It was a mess.
it really was. And that's a whole nother discussion right there.
So much depth into loved ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
So COVID.
A lot of death. Yeah. I have one of my students lost both their grandparents to COVID. Yeah. And so you hear this all the time. And then of course, with us having to go online, I was teaching this course in 2020. And, I think we met twice and then it was online and I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm just going to record it. I'm just, we're everybody's scrambling. Yeah.
Teachers, I remember.
Yeah.
Teachers were like, this is our first time and we're rolling this out. I'm like,
That's a major mark in time right there.
Yeah, that affected everybody.
And
in one
Nikki, I
giant
was
lab.
dealing with, I'm a trainer. And so
Mhm.
these people, they send everybody home. I was dealing with personalities,
Mhm.
different personalities, because you never know what a person is going through. And
Right.
so I would get all these emotional people,
Mhm.
depressed people, and some of them that came to work, I found out had an escape because their home life wasn't good.
yes.
So once they went
Sure.
home,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
hard virtually to keep them focused, keep
Mhm.
them trained, to keep them on track. I tell everybody, we're trainers, but we get a lot of personal information. If you're a person that they trust, They'll tell you a lot of their personal information.
Mhm.
And they were just, a lot of them was at home, background, being
Yeah.
abused. I mean, I was telling them several people.
That's a, yeah,
How people being
So
teachers.
you was counseling and training.
I guess, but I
Sounds
was
like
telling
it.
people needed help, you
Yes.
know, because their home life wasn't good and
And,
they spike
yeah,
bills.
that's another story right there. I could talk about that because for we therapists, there was a requirement of a 20-hour telehealth training. Well, I had just happened to take it the December before. And then, but then you had all these people with clients who couldn't come in. They're doing telehealth. We're waiting on the governor to say, okay, yeah, you can do it. You don't have to have the training. It was horrifying. It was horrible. But anyway, 20% of females experienced an episode of major depressive disorder. Now, for me, and just like we were talking, Alicia, I believe the numbers are much higher for boys than the research indicates.
Yes.
And this is because of, first of all, the male brain has a better capability of compartmentalization. So, you know how I talked about the female brain is able to, you know, use both hemispheres more efficiently. The compartmentalization of the male brain allows them to kind of put that in a box over to the side, but it doesn't mean it's not still affecting them. And then, of course, there's the stigma around emotionality. So, okay, all but two of you guys have seen this before. We're going to see it again. This one I wanted to talk about prior to the cutting discussion. Trying to function with that heightened emotion. Now, you've also got the change in brain, that alcohol effect, you know, the attention alcohol. So you've got, this is why now, but it's even young kids. But this is why when you take away the social media, they lose their minds. You've cut off the connection to peers and you've cut off their alcohol supply. Right? So, and the emotions are heightened. The other part of this that I'd like to be able to share with y'all is he talks also about the discernment between danger and basically the adolescent brain doesn't read danger. That doesn't affect me. And it's because of the emotional intensity, they're also seeking out dopamine. They're seeking out those experiences that are going to be stimulating, exciting, whatever. And if you're getting that through the screen, you're kind of enslaved to it. Yeah, and now the next part of it, you've got the heightened emotion. Next, cutting. So we see a decrease in happiness. We see increased anxiety and addictive behavior. And we see a response to depression and cutting. And so we think, okay, this is a fad. This is something that the kids do. They see their peers doing it online. What I will tell you is that cutting modulates and provides relief from profound emotional distress. Now, they may have gotten the idea out there. I've had a couple of kids that did cutting. I had one who tried it and she says, I don't like it, it hurts. Okay, good, I'll take it, whatever it takes. But the others, there are reasons for this. So, and here's a website that I highly recommend, Psych Central. I think I've mentioned that to you guys before. This is their listing. Why do kids primarily, although older people do, why do teenagers, and more female than male, resort to cutting? It repeatedly reproduces the affective experiences associated with earlier childhood traumatic experiences. In other words, traumatic experiences reproduce that. And what's happening is they're trying to relive it because the brain wants to resolve it. And so, unfortunately, it's not the way to get that done. So they'll feel that similar thing and somewhere in the subconscious, this time it will be different, this time it'll work out, this time I'll feel better. That doesn't happen. It serves as a dramatic reenactment of earlier abuse along with accompanied silence. In other words, I'm keeping this from everyone. Again, I'm trying to work through this. It serves to bear the grief of the way things were in the past. Another means of self-medicating. We're changing the emotion from sadness to focus on the pain. It simultaneously serves the threefold purpose of self-soothing, self-expression, self-punishment. And when you cut yourself, there is a dopamine release. And this was really disturbing when I was reading this. The increase in references to cutting, self-harm. Why are there 3 M's? Because it's this feeling. The dopamine, actually, there's a high that can come with it.
I've seen movies where girls try to kill themselves and
Yeah,
cut their arm.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
they bleed out.
but they'll cut, what they do is they cut somewhere where it won't show
Yeah.
to hide it from their families. But these are some of the reasons why. There is a dopamine release. Cutting serves as an addictive and soothing tool that can temporarily replace a human relationship. So they combat loneliness with it.
How is that even possible? Like, where's the?
They're feeling the loneliness, and this causes my brain to switch gears to this. And when we read how the rejection can actually light up the part of the brain that's physical pain. So what we're doing is we're transferring the pain from the loneliness to my arm or, to the back of my leg or wherever it is I can put it that no one will see. It serves as a manifestation of rage directed inward in response to earlier traumatic experiences. So if a kid realizes this was crazy, this shouldn't have happened to me, and there's no way for me to express that to the person that hurt me. So they cut. Cutting serves as a self-healing attempt to reclaim and restore self-efficacy. What does that mean? That means it's my body. I can do what I want with it. This is another reason for eating disorders too. Okay, so in sum, cutting or other forms of self-mutilation or abuse appears to be an effort by those affected to have an impact on their interpersonal world and to reclaim their personal agency. I get to say what happens to me. Now, several years ago, I had a conversation with a peer who was working, I think she was working out of Frankfurt with, I can't remember if it was the Human Services Cabinet, but she's also a therapist. And she's special, that's right, she was actually behind some of the legislation that made date rape a crime. She was telling me about this. And so she kind of specialized in working with sexual trauma. And what she said was 90% of her female clients had tattoos. Tattoos are uncomfortable to put on, right?
Right.
What do you see here? Yeah. Yeah. I say what happens to my body. And this is painful. So there's a release there too. But yeah.
You're there a lot of when you say that I need to feel the pain of leaving.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women
Yeah.
sexually abuse. I have a couple friends and Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
he's had it, like,
Mhm.
multiple tattoos. and they've
Yeah.
been valid.
Yeah, yeah. So you see women act out in their bodies against this kind of thing. A lot of obesity comes as a result of trying to look unattractive so that men don't look at you. There's a whole, if you ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk, that was one, he worked with an obesity doctor. And the doctor came and said, why is it that, I get these women and they come and they lose all this weight and then they go back. Turns out that a very high percentage of those were childhood sexual abuse survivors, rape survivors. So when you start getting attention from men, you're terrified. So
Great book, by the way.
yes,
It's terrifying.
it is. It's a difficult read. Okay, so now something to know about suicide. So we've talked about cutting, suicide. So something that you need to know is that suicide isn't necessarily the desire to die. It is the desperate means to stop pain. Mhm. Now, when you think of the impulsivity of the adolescent brain, you can see how that becomes a viable alternative to their hopelessness. And now she interviews, I thought this the first time I heard the description of Dementors from the Harry Potter series. Have any of you all seen the movies or read the books?
That's my cup is completely hurt.
Oh, okay, so there you go. But they talk about Dementors and what these things do. I think they're kind of demonic and they just suck the joy out of a person, just totally, and just wreak total despair. Yes.
After one of, I think it's Harry that has an encounter with him, he says like, I felt like I could never be happy again.
Yeah.
Like I could never experience
Mhm.
joy again.
Yeah. It's a really good description of what depression is like.
When I first watched the movies and he said that, I was like,
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to see that.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Contemplation of suicide is the confirmation of the prevalence of depression among teens. Well, how can you say that? Are there other reasons for suicide? Not many, mostly depression. And then now this is something too. So Dr. T notes the rate of suicide in girls tripled between 2007 to 2015. Boys complete suicide at a higher rate because they choose more lethal means. So what does that mean? That means that girls choose pills, cut wrists, boys use guns, ropes, right? Yeah. And you could have with this emotionality that we've talked about, the highs and lows, the high emotionality, a lot of boys complete suicide after a girl breaks up with them. And they may not have had depression before that, but there's this impulsivity and this just huge spike in their despair, and then they complete suicide. So, and by the way, just it's a subtle thing, but when you talk about suicide, it's very common for people to say committing suicide. It's the same kind of word you use for somebody committing a crime, right? For somebody committing sin. Suicide, it's a subtle thing, but words matter. So you will say a person completed suicide, attempted suicide. Just kind of keep that in your thoughts. Just like, when I said a cutter, I changed, wait a minute, a person who cuts, because then you're labeling somebody. We need to think about our words. Okay. Chart on page 111. This is pretty incredible, the difference between males and females who have completed suicides per 100,000 people, 12 to 14-year-olds. So other causes for suicide, not as common as depression. Okay. Why the rise in mental health issues? Look at the research. In order to be a factor, it must coincide with the rise in mental health issues, and that factor must move in the same direction as mental health issues. This is her being, very good researcher, very good. So what she's saying is, okay, if you look at the research, what are the factors in the mental health issues? So we've got this thing, the mental health issues. What is contributing to it? It's whatever these things happen, they've got to happen alongside, right at the same time with this spike. And it has to move in the same direction as the mental health issue. So we're talking about being analytic and going, okay, it could be something else. Let's look at it. Okay, they've got to look at the issues and what are some other things that could be a factor? Well, pressure to make better grades in order to get into a better school. Research shows a correlation between reduction in depression and increased homework. Can you believe that? That's fascinating. What does it mean? Well, later on, we talk about reading as opposed to scrolling increases happiness. It improves mood. TV watching is unchanged and even declining. So that's not happening at the same time as a spike. Physical activity and sports with teenagers are holding at the same rate. So these do not pass the test of, okay, here's the drop in mental health. Actually, homework's not there. TV's not there. It's not moving in the same direction. It's not happening at the same time. What does meet the criteria for the mental health decline? Screen time increase happened. At the same time, social interaction decreased. At the same time, print media decreased. So social interaction and print media obviously are linked to screen time because we're not together when we're on a screen. Print media, we're not reading print, we're going to the screen. All of these things happen together at the same time as this downturn. That's just me being a geek. Just so you know, I'm just like, this is no game. This is why I tell you, look at the research. Don't just take it at face value. And if you've ever heard of a meta-analysis, that's when they take a group of research projects and do an analysis of them across the board. That's tricky, and you've got to watch that too, because you got to make sure that they're measuring in a logical way, that they're not skewing the data towards some kind of bias, and it's not, you got to make sure you're as close as possible comparing apples to apples. Mm-hmm. See, that just, I geek out over stuff like that. When there's good research, huge database, now we got something we can use. Stealing sleep. How well are teenagers sleeping now?
They're up all night.
They're up all night, right? Yeah. Now, what happens in adolescence is that the sleep rhythm, the circadian rhythm, actually begins to move to later in the evening, right? Their need for sleep doesn't change, but they're getting tired and wanting to go to sleep moves later. But okay, so it's a natural tendency for them to want to stay awake later and sleep longer in the morning. And that would be something you go, there they are on Saturday morning, they're still in bed and it's noon. Well, are they lazy? No, they stayed up till 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
But that's a natural tendency. We don't realize that that's a brain thing. Now, the problem with this is school starts earlier for teenagers, in part because they need to get home before their younger siblings do so they can help take care of them. That's part of it. I think part of it probably has to do with administration preferences and possibly extracurricular activities, which are declining, of course. But they now stay up later on their devices.
And polio, is trying to put it out there about starting school later.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
And he's looking at the research. Yes.
He's looking at research.
Dr. Polio, the superintendent.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
He's talking about starting the middle school and high school later.
Yeah.
Because they're so sleepy and not awake when they start class so early. that-
So what are they gonna do with the younger?
Yeah, so I'm
That's,
thinking,
see, that's the thing.
Are they gonna push school later for the younger kids?
Well, they already later anyway.
I'm talking about later, like if they move to shift the whole.
Now imagine there's what, 100,000 kids in JCPS, at least 100,000.
elementary schools are 3:45, right?
And
Yeah.
yeah, so now you've got the logistics of buses being needed at the same time. There's so many moving parts to this thing. So, but I'm glad that he's looking at it. I really am. How they're gonna do it, I don't know. I looked at the redistricting they had on the news the other day, and it looks like it makes more sense than what they've had.
Mhm.
But, so, yeah. Anyway, it will be interesting. And I gotta say, this guy came up through the ranks in Jefferson County Public Schools, from a teacher to an administrator to principal to, right? So he knows, and he knows the people, he knows the system, and he values teachers because he is one. Anyway, that's my public announcement there. Okay. All right. So looking again at the charts here, we're looking at 4.12. Yeah, on page 114. The jump in the percentages of teens getting less than 7 hours of sleep. Well, look what that happened. Look at the timing on that. Isn't that funny? What's the timing on that? Yeah, look at when it started taking off. 2012. Why is that?
Something big happened.
I'm just saying. But these are different studies and different organizations. So now what we're looking at is they need more than 7 hours of sleep, more like 8 or 9. They're getting less than 7. So what we know about the brain is that light actually prompts the waking hormone in the brain. That's why part of what they call sleep hygiene, good sleep practices, involve a completely dark room. And I was just telling one of my clients the other day, if you've got a smoke detector in there, put a piece of tape over that green light. That can put out a lot of light.
And that would get on my nerves.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So so you got this phone right here flashing, bright, dark, all this. So you've got the spinning of looking at what's the next thing, and seeking that thrill, and right, like we've talked about with the brain's desire for that dopamine, and the slot machine effect, right?
Yeah.
Intermittent reinforcement. So like it's like an alignment of all these things coming to one perfect storm of terrible brain health.
That's why they send it to the Senate to try to keep it the same and same the way it is and not change back because it's light.
Yeah, that's yeah. So when you've got the waking hormone in the brain, even when the phone finally does get put down, it's at least 20 minutes to fall asleep, probably longer, because in addition to just the absence of light, you've also got the thoughts, and you've got the hormones, the other, the dopamine coming down and thoughts racing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I heard that you're supposed to cut off screen time an hour before you're trying to get to sleep.
Optimally an hour, but at least 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody sees them up here on TikTok for too long, you'll get that little, there'll be a little person that comes up and is like, hey, why don't you take a break? Yeah,
How
just
long?
like, you haven't been up for enough hours at a time.
What's the timing on that?
That I'd have to check because I really have never
I've never
noticed
been
it.
able to figure it out.
It's
Because there was
rare.
one time where I was on TikTok from like noon 4 and I didn't realize it until that a girl came up and was like, hey.
Yeah.
4
And
hours?
I
like a
didn't
TikTok.
know, and then I scrolled right past, I was like, holy crap, it's 4.
Yeah.
I set a screen time for it though, I'm only allowed to have 45 minutes.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
nice though, but it'll tell you like, it'll be like, hey, why don't
Yeah.
you take a break? Or you had a long day, you should, you know.
It
just-
almost offends me every time.
Sometimes. it's-
Oh, because we're messing with your social media. Yeah.
But then you think, but that's kind of one of those things, like one of the only things I've seen like that that actually takes into consideration, like you need to go. to
4
bed,
hours, though?
Get some rest.
Yeah,
It's
and
gotta be-
that's why I have no idea. what
It's
the
gotta
time
be,
is.
yeah, mine happens a lot because I'll do it late at night when nobody else is awake.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Somebody do research on that. Somebody do
I bet
research
you we
on
can
that. That's
find
it.
out.
But-
It's pretty interesting.
But Megan, don't be messing with my TikTok.
I've changed.
She's still turned it off.
I'm offended.
Whenever I see them, no.
That's my 4 hours.
It's pretty interesting. It's really the point now.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah.
It's actually.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, everybody's excused for COVID. I watched some really crappy TV. Yeah. Okay. So sleep deficiency, guess what contributes to depression, vascular disease, obesity, and of course, cognitive performance. Other factors in depression. Here's one. Nearly 30% of adolescents and teens in the United States, and this is this year, meet the criteria for pre-diabetes. That's published in the journal American Medical Association Pediatrics. So diabetes, and this includes just over 40% of young people who are obese, the data show. So a lack of physical activity contributes to depression. Poor nutrition contributes, right? So here are these things that she's not even touching on that are major factors as well. Okay, what can we do? So she talks about therapy, and this is what was so ironic, a little disturbing. Therapy is recommended when teens have mental health issues. Now, what she talked about was like the college students going to the mental health clinic. So that back then they were having waiting lists, or they limited students to so many sessions. Now, what about waiting lists? Every therapist in town has waiting lists after COVID.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
After COVID, everybody's hiring, everybody's begging for, come work here, we need you.
I've never seen that ever. And I'm talking about from peer specialists
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to doctorate degrees. Everyone is hiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are not
Yeah.
working. I mean, half the restaurants are closing down earlier because they can't find good workers.
And this is systemic as well. That's a fascinating study too, called the Great Resignation. People who are being treated crappy on the job. They got, like, wait, I don't have to take this. And it's, but that's, well, for our purposes, we're looking at waiting lists. The problem is most don't seek help because of the stigma,
Yeah.
or they don't want to worry their parents, or the parents aren't safe.
I think that's a big thing. A lot of parents do a lot of things that are not good for their kids.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they don't want their kids going to therapy talking about it because they know CPS.
Yeah, and or you've got these games. I've got one of my students right now. She's seeing the wife, and she wants her son to get therapy. The husband's saying, no, right? No, he didn't need therapy. Well, because He's gonna find out. They're gonna find out. This guy, oh my heavens, I could, anyway. Yeah, so when you see parents, they do a power play. When they split up, or even if they're still in the same house, you know, my kid's not gonna need it, or, you know, just to make your life miserable, I'm gonna say, no, I won't sign off on it. Because when you've got a divorce, both parents have to sign the release, the consent. Both parents.
It's so crazy though, like after a kid is, like,
Mhm.
what is it, 12, 13, in court, they can say which parent, you know, they have a say so.
It's, yeah, and it depends on the judge too. The judges, there's
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
don't get me started on those judges.
Yes.
But yeah, in Kentucky, yeah, when they hit double digits, 12, they can, they're supposed to be able to say, hey, I don't want to go. But they'll still be, I had a teenager I saw last year. Judge said, you're going to go. And she was 14. Indiana, it's supposed to be 10. But yeah. So those are, so you know, you've got these things, getting them help when they're depressed. Absolutely do it, make it happen. But the best option is preventative medicine. Increase life-giving practices, limit screen time, make sure they get enough sleep and relational contact. Guess what? They got a thing called cell phone jail. Right. And I'm interested to hear about that, you know, having the phone, having that cut off at a certain time of night.
That's what my friend did.
That's fascinating. So it sounds like there are some companies that are looking at different things they can do. But that's a good thing.
Just keep it old school, give me your phone.
That's
Yeah.
what my sister training class.
My older sister, I have nephews, they're in high school. They're not allowed to be on their phones after 7 o'clock at night. They're not allowed to have it. They're allowed to have a phone because they're in high school, but when they were in middle school, they weren't allowed to take their phones to school. So it's like a small window when they can have it.
Yeah.
And other times, outside of that, they outside. And it's so different because everybody drives past her house in the neighborhood and they're looking at them crazy like, outside.
Kids are playing outside.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Right? Those kids will be boss, you know, they're going to be in charge. Churches need to reach parents and offer social opportunities to teens often. We'll get more into some of this stuff when we get into the Generation Z. But here's something I want y'all, if your one takeaway tonight, we've got to think like missionaries. It's a different culture, different mindset. And right now we're learning the culture. And you know, the Gen Z book, he's got some good things that, and it's amazing what he talks about. You know, you've got to reach the father, reach the male. If he comes, the family will come. You know, there's a whole lot of, I mean, it's truth. He's just laying it out there. Okay. All right. Is everybody taking breaks as needed? All right. All right. I'm just going to plow through. Okay. Being safe. This is one of the things I love. This kid that she interviews, Haley. She says, you know, I'm not going to have sex as a high schooler because that causes your brain to produce oxytocin, and I don't want to get emotionally attached to somebody when I'm in high school. Yes, girl.
Who told her that?
I guess she found it on the internet. But see, this is the thing, is oxytocin is the bonding hormone. And so this is why this is any two people in relationship, a hug, eye contact, touch, even just saying kind words can cause that, right? They're not getting it through a screen. But I just got to say, I'm impressed with this kid. Okay, here are some of the pluses of more safety. iGens are far more likely to wear a seatbelt, say no to a person who's been drinking and get behind the wheel, and they get less traffic tickets.
That's because I'm not driving.
That's part of it. That's part of it. Okay, so they're aware of the risks of binge drinking. The rates of binge drinking have fallen. Some give safety as a reason, and this 20-year-old Tegan said it would lead to trouble with the law or embarrassment on social media because you act stupid. And embarrassment could lead to you're not getting hired for a job. She's not saying that my people are going to see me acting stupid. I'm just not going to, I get arrested or I'll. So interesting take on that. Okay, what about pot? Guess what? No decline in marijuana use in iGen compared to millennials. The belief is that marijuana is safe. And this is why I'm getting ready to preach. They're in lockstep with this legalization movement and all of the propaganda that they're putting out there. Oh, it's good for, they've got research. Okay, so the iGens say it's been proven to help with pain, cancer, and other illnesses. Okay, yes, there is some actual data on the relief of nausea with cancer patients. Help with pain. I'm saying it's THC though. It's not smoking pot. It's the chemical, not the one that makes you high, but the other. And I'm saying, where's the data from all this stuff? THC, there's an CBD, the CBD, that's it. That's it. THC makes you high. CBD can be used that. So anyway, I asked the question, where is the data? You show me.
You're hurting your lungs.
You're hurting
no
your
matter
lungs.
what.
Right. But where is the data? I went on the CDC website. I've looked for the data. You can't get the data. Where is it? Is it coming from the cannabis industry? Y'all get me some references and I will look at it.
What's the difference between cannabis and marijuana?
Well, cannabis is just another name for, yeah. So it's the movement to legalize it, recreational use. Not medicinal, but recreational use.
So one of the things I would like to go down a rabbit hole.
Sure.
sometime, and what they're saying is there's no data because big pharma doesn't want it out.
Uh-huh.
So
Here we go, the money again.
Yeah.
Big pharma, yes.
My thing with this is I've kind of died on this hill, like I honestly,
Yeah.
like for the reasons that like it's unavoidable, marijuana is always gonna be around. I'd rather it be safe and like, because it's gonna be.
Okay.
And there's so many people in Louisville, Southern Indiana.
Lacing it with
getting
fentanyl, all
yes.
kinds of
Yeah,
craziness.
so dangerous.
Let me
That's
just
why
say-
I have to regulate it, but I know that's tricky. and
I know. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So here we go. Not that one. This one. Okay, so what these are, this is SPECT scan, that's single photon emission to computerized tomography. It's a brain scan. So you have to, over here you see this is a healthy brain. What a SPECT scan measures is kind of like an MRI, but it's been proven, research, that it's a little better at detecting mental health issues in brains. But what you see here is even blood flow and electrical activity. All right, so here is a marijuana user's brain. This is a 28-year-old with 10 years, mostly weekend marijuana use. What do you see there? The holes indicate a reduction in blood flow and electrical activity. Okay, Now that's weekend use. How many people you know just do it on the weekend? It can't, yeah, but I know, but look here. So we've all got a past. I was too paranoid to be able to use it, so there you go. Yeah. But now look here, look over here. Any substance can cause issues. So now this is the top looking down, that's the bottom looking up. 4 years of marijuana use, 4 years of smoking. So that's nicotine.
That's worse than the marijuana use.
It slightly, yeah. I mean, you got 6 years of opiates, 4 years of cocaine, 10 years of alcohol, 3 years of meth. And look at the ages here. This is all ages. This is age 17, a 4-year smoker, 22, 22-year-old, 20, 38-year-old, 37-year-old. So this is my point. And in fact, she does say there is a reduced intelligence and an increased risk of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia manifests in adolescence. So we've got the brain changes that are happening at adolescence. And if you have a genetic predisposition, it's going to be increased in emerging. Some people may have the genetics and not develop it. But if you have the genetics, it's higher risk of that. Let me tell you something, you don't want schizophrenia. So there you go. There's my pictures. Just saying. I had a friend of mine, he's a therapist too. And he was talking about a buddy of his. Let's see, where does this guy live? It was a friend of his in Spain. The guy's originally from Mexico. So he lived with this guy for a couple of years in Spain, smoked pot from morning, noon, night, every day. And he said the guy was intelligent, but he got slower and slower and slower over time. Now, this is, okay, you know what? You have your opinion, I have mine. I'm just saying that you're slowing the brain down, you're reducing intelligence. That can contribute to depression as well. Okay. All right. We're just flying right through this. We're going to get done early, y'all. The decline of the fight and the waning of sexual assault. So school fights, how many of y'all remember those back in the day? Everybody goes running, right? It's, yeah. It's crazy. I always, why do you want to see somebody hurt somebody else? I never understood it. There they go. Well, guess what? Those are down. Those are down. Sexual assault is down among Gen Z. Now, is this a change in behavior or simply a reduction in opportunity? That's what I'm saying. Suicide rate is higher, exactly.
Well, maybe the assault's lower, but what about like harassment? Because that happens a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true too. So no risk, please. The decline in attempting dangerous things. No, she talks about, you remember what was it? Jousting with mailboxes, that kind of thing, where you take a baseball bat and the kids used to do that, Isaiah's going, what are you talking about? The kids, So, spray painting things, vandalizing, all those kinds of things, they don't happen as much. Author Richard Goldstein asks, if you don't take chances, how can you invent yourself? If you aren't comfortable with instability, how can you create change? What I'm saying is risk looking inward and reaching out. You've got to take chances in order to change. Okay, now here's the question is, which came first, the anxiety, depression, or the fear of the risk? Chicken or the egg? I think there are a lot of variables in that. you know, you're looking at the parenting, you're looking at being in my cocoon at home, having a window to the world in my pocket. It's easy to stay home, isn't it? Okay, and this is the one. Boy, the older folks here, I'm going to tell you, they're going to start getting pretty vocal here in a minute, guys. Okay, safe space. So we talked about safe space earlier. What a safe space is a designated place for, and this was brought out by universities, providing LGBT and minorities a place to gather with like-minded individuals without fear of judgment or abuse. So, okay. Probably not a bad idea. It's sad that we need that, but let's look at reality.
And we need that in the church.
Ooh, the whole church should be that, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that'll preach. Yeah,
It's hard to say that
Yeah.
because most people are struggling.
that's another reason.
And that's
we've
why
got
people
to-
don't come, the younger generation, and if they don't get connected early because of it.
Yeah, and so this is where we have to show them who Jesus was like.
Yeah.
So the fear of judgment or abuse involved into the belief that any disagreement is harmful. And this is where she goes case after case. So case after case of safe space. So Dr. T did some research on her own campus, and there was a 75% agreement rate with the need for a safe space when a speaker they disagree with is speaking on campus. They need a safe place. Somebody's talking. I don't like what they're saying. I gotta have a safe space.
Right.
She was shocked by that.
Yeah.
She was shocked by that. So yeah, you know, I get it. We don't want to have the KKK come and speak, but I mean, come on, y'all. That a lot of it happens when a political speaker from whatever the side is you don't like comes, and this is where it gets really crazy. Or a person that might have some religion. They might have a religious background. Okay, so what's happened is a lot of universities are disinviting these controversial speakers. Uh-oh, we had all these kids throw a fit. They don't feel safe. Words are gonna hurt them, right? So the students are literally equating speech, what people say, with physical violence. And one of the students she quoted in here says, it's harder to protect your mind than your body. What are you protecting it from? If you don't get confronted with different ideas, you don't know what you believe. And that's why, you know, when somebody questions their faith, I'm like, good, wrestle with it. It's not yours if you don't. You've got to know what you believe in. If you're looking at things and you're asking questions, great. That's one of the things that we talked about that was so toxic with churches not allowing people to ask the hard questions. There's where they need to be getting the answers.
And I think they won't let you ask some hard questions because maybe they don't have the answer. Maybe they're not educated in. It's just like mama brought me up, grandmama brought me
Yeah.
up. And so this is what I'm
Biblical
doing.
illiteracy.
Yes.
Point you in the right direction, but it's just one book.
Yeah.
And the other thing is sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know.
It is okay, because we don't know everything.
And we're not going to.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is okay. So here we go. A student told Oklahoma Wesleyan, which is Methodist University president Everett Piper, not related to John Piper, that he felt victimized after he gave a sermon on love from 1 Corinthians 13. He said it made him feel bad for not showing love. Victimized. Yes. That was, you see what I'm saying? What in the world?
That's not victimization, that's conviction.
Right. Oh, but you can't have that. Makes me feel bad. I can't feel bad. Now, in all fairness, so think about this. If you're steeped in this soup of anxiety and depression and attention alcohol, it's pretty hard to let anything else in that might rock the boat, isn't it? Yeah.
Instead of doing it internally, you're feeling the need to project how you've been harmed. That's
Yeah.
this whole society of like, you need to think about my feelings. No, you think about your feelings and you handle it how
Right.
you feel respect, right? But you
yeah.
can't- Well,
So they're making, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how to confine it all, but like when we were talking about anxiety, depression, and
Mhm.
if it's caused from social media, this has been, I've noticed it like when I was in like probably like 7th grade. Everyone, like all my peers, everybody has to have it worse than the other. It's all a battle for, I'm actually depressed, you're not, you're just saying you're depressed, like you're just sad, but no, I'm actually depressed, or I actually have anxiety. Everybody has to be a victim, they have to be more of a victim than you are, and that's what our entire generation is becoming, and that's why it's becoming this whole thing.
What's your take on that? What do you believe about that?
It fills me with rage.
Fills you with rage?
It
What do
makes
you,
me so mad because there's somebody out there that's actually struggling with depression and anxiety and demons that none of us could probably imagine.
Okay.
They're just
Right.
and
quiet.
those people are probably quiet about it.
Yes.
Well, you know what, I ended up having a conversation similar to this before class. I was
Yeah.
talking to my friend,
Uh-huh.
we was talking about people having, but I came to the conclusion, we're all different. So what may affect you in one way is not gonna affect me the same way. So it's not really about who has it worse or what, it's what you can handle, because there's things I've been able to handle that my friend can never, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So.
what was that? Comparison always leads to
Exactly.
carnality.
And attention, alcohol, that whole, everybody
Mhm.
loves it. I don't even know how to, but like so many people, that's what my generation, I feel like, describes off of. It's just getting some sort of tidbit. And most times it has to be negative for it to be, there's not many people out there that applaud the small victories anymore, so they just are like, I'm depressed. I have anxiety, my anxiety is acting up, I have to get out of here, like, help me, come with me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is good that it should be safe for people to talk about their mental illnesses. I don't want to be that type of person, like, don't. But
No.
people are overcorrecting, like, there's a difference between having a bad day and being depressed.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my sister is just a couple of years younger than me. And we went through similar, young trauma as children, but she turns around every other day and has got an issue. Like, we were getting ready to go somewhere and it was really hot outside and she was wearing jeans and a long sleeve shirt. And I was like, hey, we're gonna be outside. Do you wanna borrow something to wear that might be cooler for you? And she had an anxiety attack because I made a judgment on her outfit. Like, she had a come apart where she was like, I'm having so much anxiety right now. I'm like, why? Because I was worried about your heat level. Like, I don't understand. And I was like, I don't understand. She's like, well, it's not for you to understand. I was like, well, I'd love to be able to understand it. But she was like, it was more about that attention.
Yes.
And it seems to be something all the time like that. So but that's kind of like the ones that I can.
Now, which sister was this?
That's right.
Yeah, but that's coming
okay.
from somewhere.
I know.
Yeah,
This is, it's
coming
like her
from
one.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I know.
You guys have a genetic,
I know.
there's some genetic stuff here.
Yeah, and she's so like,
Yeah.
educated, she's a professor, she's like all these things, but she can like lose her mind on some things. And then when I
Triggers,
try and
yeah.
get into it with her and she's like, no, I just can't.
Okay, and being terrified of emotions is a thing too, to have emotions.
I struggle with that, I was there last year and I struggled with that a lot. Like, I would literally just become a stone wall, so I would have to be,
Yeah.
it was too much.
Yeah, and so that's, the brain wants to work through that. That's another conversation. Okay, so expanding on this, the safety of home everywhere. So story, Yale, the year 2015, the administration suggested students not wear offensive costumes for Halloween. One resident master countered it with an email stating, basically, this is negating the maturity of our students. They've got the ability to exercise self-censorship, and the students lost their freaking minds. They lost their minds. And they protested this. And so her husband gets surrounded by protesters on campus, shouting over his attempts to talk to them. And when he disagreed with their views, this one student dropped the F-bomb over and over again and said, it's not about creating an intellectual space. It is not. It is about creating a home here.
I'm confused, so they was mad because he didn't want to be censored.
Okay, so
What?
the administration said, don't wear an offensive costume. The resident master said, guys, you can, you've got the judgment, you can do this. They lost their minds
They crazy.
because somebody could wear something offensive.
Don't look crazy.
That's the question,
and then-
like, what's considered offensive, what's not, like.
Yeah.
Someone might get offended that you're wearing any number of costumes. for any
Right.
particular reason.
Sure. So that, but it's not, and this is what I'm thinking too, is here's this poor guy, his wife sent an email, and he's just walking along the campus, and they surround him. Where's the safe space for him? And they're screaming at him.
And that's the thing, if you said that to them, they'd be like, well, that doesn't matter, we're not talking about that.
Exactly.
You turn it around into something that makes sense, they have to immediately
Right.
disregard on you.
Because it's not based on logic. So yeah.
Halloween is $1 billion.
It is.
When
It
I
is.
found that out, I was just like, I could not believe it. They got pop-up shops to be up for a week.
Yeah.
People, I see people that got to have thousands of dollars. They be having coffins in their yard and everything, there's $1 billion industry.
I mean,
Yeah.
I almost bought a $300 skeleton this past year. So
See what I'm
not
saying?
even-
Oh,
Yeah.
It's all
That probably was on sale, was it on sale?
Have you ever heard of the haunted hotel?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only open once a year.
Yeah, that makes money.
You know, how you go look it up, see how much money they make.
oh.
It's
All right. Well, so anyway, we're talking about the students on these campuses don't want to hear anything that they don't agree with, and they don't want anybody offended. They're offended by people who are trying to give them freedom. So really, I just say, really? What
That's
the
why
heck?
I was confused, and I'm like, am I hearing this right?
Yeah.
I got mad.
I know.
I said, you'll read it. When you read you're gonna be mad when you read this chapter. I'm just telling you. When you get to that section, she tells story after story after story of this kind of stuff. And I was like, no. Right. So there you go.
It's like you can't win. It's like, if you say you have to have boundaries, then they get upset.
Mhm.
Then if you say, well, no, you have the freedom to choose, then they get upset. It's like there's no.
Well, what's their thought process on it? Like, why? I don't understand.
Well, here's the name of the section is, it's your job to protect us and keep us safe. So college administrators are supposed to be parents. So what I ask is this because of lack of parenting from Gen X? And from my standpoint as a therapist, if what we found and what the research says over and over again is when you have secure attachment in your relationship as you start life, that will continue throughout your life. You will be more resilient. You will be able to go out into the world and fight your battles. You will have more courage to confront. You will be able to let things slide without experiencing emotional pain when you have solid connection. So these hands-off parents have left kids raising themselves or letting the phone raise them. Right. And so nobody's taught them how to have relationship. Nobody's taught them, yeah, they go to school, but that's an artificial kind of environment too. They're not, so that's what we're talking about here is without secure connection to another human being, we're floundering. Okay. Yes, like I said, okay, this is, most is, this example after example. One of them was a racist remark. Okay, what did the student do? Political flyer came out onto campus. A political statement was written in chalk on the sidewalk. What did they do? They went to the administrators instead of the person who said the thing. Now, the racist remark was a guy in a truck driving by the school.
The school has no control of.
Right.
Or any.
But they were outraged. This needs to be a safe environment. The guy was in a truck. We don't even know who the guy was. How do you, right? Or, if somebody says something offensive, you say, I don't appreciate that comment. No, we got to go get the administrator. And then you got this kid talking about the whole, well, there needs to be an administrator so that there's not a fight and there's not this, not that. Yeah, you're gonna be ticked off when you read this chapter. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Whatever that may be.
It's
Well, there's some people that say things they do believe it, have to correct them.
Mhm.
and There's some people trying to just
right.
make everybody mad.
Yeah. So all of these stories will get your blood pressure going. Let's see. Okay, here's one I want us to read together. Page 162, if you have your book. Everybody's been talking tonight. I love it. So would somebody care to read the paragraph 3 on 162, beginning in their Atlantic piece? And I'll let you say Tater for the names of the writers.
Okay, Taylor and Taylor argue that the focus on safe spaces, trigger warnings, and microaggressions has things backward. The emphasis on protecting the emotions of students might actually be damaging their mental health. Cognitive behavior therapy, the most common and empirically supported talk therapy for depression, teaches people to try to see things more objectively. Yet the language of safe spaces, trigger warnings, and microaggressions encourages the opposite, letting your feelings guide your interpretation of reality.
Yeah. So what it does is it challenges your beliefs about things. If you believe that people hate you, that guy hates me. Did you see his face when you walked by? The man may have indigestion. You don't know, right? He could, right? So that's just one example of how you would challenge these false beliefs about things. If I believe that I'm less than somebody else, then if I'm doing cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm gonna say, okay, what other things could this be? Is this really true about who you are? And then we dig into that. When have you believed this before? What does that mean? What do you do when you believe this? So anyway, so what they're saying is there are other reasons. If we've got that screen, then we've got tunnel vision. We've got no emotional tools in our toolkit. We have no attachment figures that we're connected to solidly, securely. And so they're floundering. Okay. So are we raising up a generation that will be like those we accuse now of ignorance? Those believe there is or isn't an election stolen or Russian interference or whatever. You see this on the news. Those ignorant people in those flyover states or those crazy liberals up in New York or whatever, those people. What are we doing? It's right. And so what we've got are people who are locked into a lack of discernment and no analytical ability. We're just going with whatever pops up on that screen. And we're not asking questions. Is this really true? What How many times does she describe her research? Because a person can read it. She could take all that stuff out and just say, this says this, and this. She is backing it up. And we're looking at it and we're going, okay, here's what we could say, that these are just lonely kids that are on their smartphones. But what are all the other studies saying? See, you guys are in college. You're smart enough. Okay. So without examining all ideas, even the ones we don't like, information sources, we continue in blind ignorance. Now I subscribe to there are a lot of independent writers that write these essays, and some are professionals, some are just, venting 10 reasons why men are liars, or something along the lines of what research says now about mindfulness. So it's just the gamut. It'll say, here's an unsolved murder, and here's the story. Just, so I read this thing and I get in there and there are some Christian haters in there. And I read that. I read that stuff. Well, okay, I could see why you question that. That does sound kind of wacky. I see what you're saying. Doesn't mean I agree. I know different, but I don't get enraged. I'm like, okay, this is a person who doesn't have all the information or whatever. So, it's not threatening to read something like that. It's good because it helps me to go, okay, all right, but I know what scripture says here. And I know that historically this happened at that time and this, and I know the whole story. You've got to read that kind of stuff. You've got to challenge yourself. Okay, how did we get here? Long childhoods. So the movement of making transition to college is just a move into another safe haven. So think about this. So we've got the, what she's claimed to be a longer childhood and a shorter adolescence. So really, they're not equipped, and they get, no wonder they want a safe haven at college. They're still kids. They're still children emotionally. What about lawsuits? Lawsuits. We are a society of lawsuits. The first one that I bet at least 3 of us can say, oh, remember the McDonald's hot coffee case? The coffee was hot. The guy spilled it in his lap and it burned him, and he sued McDonald's. And he won. That's why you see caution, hot liquid inside. Yeah, that's how it happened, right?
And it's not, my thing was about the temperature. You felt like the temperature was above what could have been considered hot to drink.
Let me tell you, I want mine boiling.
It has to be hot. It shouldn't be that.
It shouldn't be that hot. Yeah, you see, so that's just one example of case after case after case of this kind of stuff. I remember, I think I told you all this story. Here we go with that, if you've heard this before. Okay, I'll choose a different one because I was thinking about parenting. I had parents just get irate because the kids could turn the burners on the stove. My kids didn't come in the kitchen when I was, right? Anyway, no, this guy had a cat. The cat ran across the range and the burner came on. My cat could have been burned. This is what I'm saying. I said, and when I said, well, gosh, I'm so sorry that happened, because I'm in customer service, right? I'm so sorry that happened. Your cat's okay, right? Yes, the cat's okay, but it could have happened. Okay, well, I wonder, and I know you can't put a baby gate or anything like that. Is there a room that you could put your cat? I'm not putting my cat in the bedroom. Right? See, this is what we're talking about. They could have sued GE for making a range that burned his cat. Stop. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I want to tell you, that was before Gen Z. That's before. So we've already got a generation that's blaming other people for them not being able to keep themselves. If they get hit by, if they drop coffee in their lap, they're gonna get burned. Whose fault is that? It was an accident. It was an accident. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's
Everything
serious.
has a caution.
But it
Yeah.
all does because somebody sued because they didn't pay
Mhm.
attention.
Yeah.
And it was really, I mean, that's the thing, a child, you have to get into, but that's the way that can happen. If you're
Right.
like,
So many of them. So anyway, we had a generation of the lawsuits and that. And then of course, now we've got what is it? The heavy hammer?
oh, the heavy hitter.
The heavy hitter. Yeah. The hammer. Yeah, he's Daryl Isaacs. Daryl Isaacs. So you got all these guys going, hey, you know, were you hurt by a truck driver? I can get you the maximum money. So everybody's going, I did get hit by, a truck. I was in a car accident where I'm sitting at the light and there's there's a couple of cars in front of me and I hear this bang and I'm like, oh no. And then all of a sudden I feel, and then I bumped the car in front of me. And I was so ticked off because I knew it wasn't, it was just somebody losing their mind, whatever. We get out of the cars and the lady in front of me, which I was kind of like got tossed around a little bit. It was okay. I was on my way somewhere. I was gonna be late. So I was ticked off. And she gets out and she goes, my back's kind of hurt. And I'm going, how? I mean, she had a scratch on her bumper. And I'm going, I'm going, okay, yeah. But I mean, you see what I'm saying? Everybody's looking for a quick buck. Okay. All right. So what we're seeing is that Gen Z, iGen wants to be safe. And what we see there are some good things that have been put into place. You've got airbags, you've got infant car seats, you got teen driving restrictions, safety devices, anti-lock brakes, all these other things. Those are good things, and death rates are down with children and teens. That's a good thing. But the safety devices aren't the problem. It's the fear of being hurt and taking risks. Less risk means less exploration, less confidence, less resilience around making mistakes. Remember, again, we're comparing, what was that you said? The light.
Low lights to your, another person's
Highlights. Yeah.
That
You
is
need to
real.
send that in the chat really quick.
I really struggle with the whole, when I came to
Mhm.
Christ, I struggled with all the rules and
Yeah,
regulations.
yeah.
It gave me so
Mhm.
much anxiety because
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't want to mess up. Like, it was
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of grace in there.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really bad. And that
Mhm.
makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So more fear now appears in iGen's fear of social interaction. They don't know how to talk to people in person. And there's an inability to navigate conflict and challenges to their thinking. If we allowed ourselves to be exposed to things we don't agree with and did some analysis, that kind of thing, wouldn't be such a huge deal. And if you disagree, you hate me.
I hate
Right.
You disagree, you hate me. What? I am okay with people that like okra. I hate okra. I don't hate you.
Right.
Do you hate me because I hate okra? Come on, y'all. Okay. Intrinsic, so meaning inward. Intrinsic value is that which cannot be monetized. It's the inner world and the unseen. And we as spiritual people get that. Extrinsic is the priority with Gen Z. And Dr. T talks about one of her students saying it's harder now to afford what our parents had. We got student loans and everything is more expensive. Yes, I think student loans are criminal, but that's not our discussion. That's not our discussion. Our discussion is, do I, as a 21-year-old just getting out of college, expect to have the house, the furniture, and the car that my parents had when they, you got to start with a crapper of a car, you know, you have to start, right? But they're expecting to have everything, and that's why they're moving back home. I can't afford cable. I'm going back home. Well, excuse me, internet, not cable. Yes.
I saw a comedian on TikTok, he was talking about how like there's all these people, like older people that live in like multi-million-dollar beautiful townhomes in like San Francisco, New York
Yeah.
City, and they're like, I bought this back in 1989 for 11 raspberries, and they're like actually like $3 million.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta start somewhere.
Well, and of course, rent right now for everybody. It's terrible. It's terrible. My son's got to move out, and I'm not happy about this situation. Okay, there's an expectation of having to say things. We don't realize the years it took for them to get to the place where they can't afford them. Screen time increases exposure to advertisements. Again, the economic impact, the algorithms, you know, how many of y'all, not joking, I think I clicked on something on JCPenney's website. And then I went back to my email, and in the side was this thing I clicked on at JCPenney.
Oh, you can stay open and stuff.
Oh, yeah, it hears you. Stuff we talk about in class.
Yeah.
Is it on my Facebook? That's not on my phone. I mean, it's on, but the screen is off. Yeah, I
I
say
do some stuff too, because they started sending me millennial generational stuff on TikTok. so I started
every
saving them.
time. It doesn't
Whoa.
matter what it is. Every time we leave there.
I'm probably going to get a JCPenney ad whenever.
She's like, that's an old people's store. I don't want that.
Mine has been, since I guess we're talking about, you know, different generations,
Yeah.
it's been like books on the different generations,
Mhm.
research, and it's on Facebook. It's weird.
How much do they know? Yeah, goodness. Okay, so fame, money, and image are easier to display on social media, and likes or streaks. I got a new word.
I like that on the test.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I couldn't think of what it was for to say.
Yeah.
I heard it on Snapchat like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. So
What was the name?
It's just it's a run,
You
it's
sent
a,
like a photo of
Run
it
of-
or someone.
yeah.
people clicking likes over a series of periods. Yeah, she knows.
But when you and someone else Snapchat each other back and forth for at least 3 days, and after 3 days consecutively, then it starts a streak of days that you open.
And if I hadn't presented last week, we wouldn't have talked about it.
I wouldn't have gotten those
Deeply,
extra 5
as we
points.
said.
There you go. Yeah, I am listening. Okay. I'm only here because I have to. Attitudes towards school and college. Teens' interest in school took a plunge in, wait for it, 2012. What happened in 2012?
Smartphone.
This is so insane. I mean, to consider all of the, right? It really, yeah. And of course, you know, when I talk to couples, you know, there's this going on. Yeah, they don't do it in my session, but they talk about it at home. Every time I try to talk to her, she's like this. Yeah. No, they don't bring those in. They're gonna put those down. Now, when they try to pull that, oh, I've got this text. No, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear it. It's not helpful.
Class of 9, and 8 of them, there was only one person over 50, where the ages of 20 and 26.
Uh-huh.
And during that whole process, we had the training in person.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, the 21-year-old, Michelle, you gonna take my cell phone? I said, yes. I said, and then I would say, do you know why? No. I've told you twice to get off your cell phone. You're gonna miss something in training. And
Yeah.
the third time, I didn't tell you what I was gonna do. At that time, I'm gonna take it until it's time to go on break.
Yeah.
Then they come in, they drop the cigarettes. on the ground, and I pick them up, I just keep them in to somebody's. So they got to the point where people's cell phones was missing or whatever. Miss Shirley got my cell phone. Once I tell you twice and you don't do it. And then these people that I stayed on were the ones that had the lowest test score.
Oh, yeah. And here's some information too on the brain, is that you cannot focus on two things at once. There is a switch and there is a lag time between changing your attention from one thing to the next. And productivity is lost. You probably studied this at UPS. So you see that the more times people are checking their phones, email, whatever, you're seeing downtime in the workplace.
I had an older lady call her daughter, and I said, this is the second time she's called me, you can be on your phone, you ain't trying. So I got on the phone with the mother, I said, excuse me, I said, my name is Sherry Jones, and I'm one of the trainers here. Your daughter's in training, and she can't talk to you until her break time. And the mama said, oh, for real? Yeah, for real. That's what she said to me, so this is what you teach your child.
Work, it's work, I'm at work. But here's what's kind of disturbing. So teens are questioning the value of education in getting good employment. I think what they're learning is irrelevant to their lives. So here's where I go off. Is that true?
No.
No, everything has been relevant.
No. Okay. Now I got to tell you, do I use geometry?
Every day I get more and more bitter about how little I've learned in high school that would have been useful to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those, I appreciate people that get jobs straight out of high school,
Yeah.
like blue collar workers, all those people impress me beyond belief. But like so many of my friends are like, why are you, like, we have to go to school, we have to do work, like school's my job, my parents are worried about me working, so I can just go to school. And I'm like, there's so much more value in life than what you do for work or school. Or
Yeah.
like, I don't know, education is important to me, but it wasn't like debilitating.
And it's not the foundation for a Christian home.
Mhm.
And people put emphasis on kids being in sports and about education, putting pressure, make all A's so you can get scholarship. But what they're teaching, they're not teaching them is the foundation of your child knowing who Jesus Christ is.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, so here we go. Books are boring. Remember that one from the other chapter? Books are boring. And one kid was talking about being in class. Well, we keep our books in case our tablet goes down. So the schools, bringing in tablets, laptops, that kind of thing. But yeah, college isn't a place to gain knowledge anymore, become a better person. Exposure to different ideas is upsetting, emotionally unsafe. College is a means to get a job and make more money. So it's a consumer mentality.
It's so weird because they push back when I'm not going to college because of the law. So which one is it?
I know. It shouldn't be. The loan thing, just, yeah,
It's overrated.
it's crazy.
It's horrible.
So, but in my opinion, gaining knowledge helps you become a better person.
It does. And it doesn't matter what exactly it is, it's when you might use it.
If nothing else, you're exercising your brain, Okay, caring and community. We think, oh, these kids are, they're aware of social issues. Fewer iGeners express empathy for those unlike themselves. Online, they express a desire to contribute, but they don't follow through. One person called it slacktivism. What are they learning online? The hopes that was expressed by previous generations that the internet could open young people to more civic engagement as they learn about what their peers in oppressive countries are experiencing has not happened.
Yeah, because they gravitate towards people like them.
Yeah. It's divisive. Individual attitudes have won out over greater community involvement. In fact, the heavier the social media use, the less concern for social concerns and the more materialistic and self-centered. So So what are their concerns overall? This is what this, page 176 and 77 has got these charts. You got to the right are things that are important to them, and to the left are things that are not important to them. So what do you got? You got materialism, entitlement, gender equality, that's good. Desirable to have friends of other races, but then government should solve environmental problems, think about social issues, no political views, no, okay. And then when you go to, and this was a 10-hour a week social media use, here's 20 hours a week. They don't care about anything there. That's what we're looking at, is just less and less engagement with the world.
How many hours is in a week, including-
Somebody got a calculator.
24 hours a day times 7, so 7 times 4 is
72.
8.
168.
Thank you.
How many?
168.
Now, take 8 a day for hopefully sleep, and that's your waking hours. Yeah. So here's a quote that I found was interesting. The more they use words to communicate, the less they put their bodies at risk, and the more they put their emotions at risk. Staying at home means they aren't going out to help anybody. Now, I did have one more video I wanted to show you.
And I sent you my little
I got it.
TikTok. That it's
Did you?
found.
Yeah, you just think. Thank you.
And this is 60 minutes. It's not 60 minutes long. It's about 6 minutes.
The National Institutes of Health study is following more than 11,000 children over a decade. In early testing, researchers found significant differences in brain chemistry for kids who had at least 7 hours of screen time